Hello class, welcome to chapter 1 in our Smaldino text on exploring the 21st century learner. There are a couple of different versions out there, so just so you know, there are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. If I refer to a page number or something that doesn't quite match with your text, you might just need to flip and find the right spot. The other issue is that the ISTE standards are no longer called the NET standards. So when I talk about them, we will pull open the current standards page so you can see the differences. But some of the different things that we will talk about for this chapter, we're going to look at the key components of a framework for 21st century learners and learning. We're going to talk about the status of technology and media in today's pre-K through 12th grade schools, but we'll also talk about adult learning theory. So some of you guys I know may not technically be in a traditional K-12 classroom, but instead you'll be looking to assist adult learners, whether it's with professional development in a school or if it is developing modules for adult learners, maybe who are in the nursing profession or electricians. We'll also talk about the roles of technology in media and learning. We'll talk about the typical 21st century teacher or instructor now and the typical learner. We'll talk about the framework for 21st century learning literacies. We'll talk about 21st century learning environments, how they have changed from a face-to-face classroom or environment where you are teaching directly in the same place as your learner. We'll talk about the role of the ISTE standards, and then we'll also talk about some copyright law for educational use. So we'll jump right in first with going to the ISTE standards. If you have access to your computer, you might want to pause for just a second and pull open the ISTE standards or the ISTE website. It is www.iste.org, and if you'll do /standards, you'll be in the same spot that I am. Also, if you have your textbook in front of you, you can use that as we navigate through chapter 1. So basically what the ISTE standards are, they're a framework for students, educators, administrators, coaches, not like the football coach or it could be, but these are instructional coaches that are teaching technology skills, and computer science educators. And it's helping rethink education and create those innovative learning environments for the 21st century learner. So the first thing, if you click on standards, you can see the different types that there are. We're going to start with the ones for educators, but we'll also be integrating the ones for students, or for some of you guys, you may end up with the coaches standards. But for now, we'll just click on educators, since all of us in here will be the teacher for some type of project. The very first thing to notice is there are 7 strands, or they call this a roadmap. But if you click on, we start with learner, it goes through leader, citizen, all the way down to analyst. But basically, the learner part, educators continually improve their practice by learning from and with others and exploring proven and promising practices that leverage technology to improve student learning. So as an educator, it's still our job to learn. So you need to set professional goals to explore and apply pedagogical approaches by technology and reflect on the effectiveness. And so throughout our course, we will be utilizing this standard quite often. You'll need to pursue professional interests by creating and actively participating in local and global learning networks. You'll want to stay current with research that supports improved student learning outcomes. As a leader, you can click on those and you can see basically there's 3 different parts of each one of these strands. So as a leader, we're to seek out opportunities for leadership to support student empowerment and success and improve our teaching and learning. So an educator who is a leader will shape, advance, and accelerate a shared vision for empowered learning with technology by engaging with education stakeholders. Will advocate for equitable access to educational technology, digital content, and learning opportunities to meet the diverse needs of all of our students. And especially in this chapter, we will talk about assistive technology for this very first module in our course. We'll also model for colleagues the identification, exploration, evaluation, curation, and adoption of new digital resources and tools for learning. So all of these different strands we will be working on throughout our course. So those are the ISTE standards for educators. The other ones that you want to be familiar with will be the ones for students. So if you click, you can notice, again, they have their own roadmap, and these are typically broken down into 4 parts instead of just 3 like for educator ones. But we want empowered learners. So students leverage technology to take an active role in choosing, achieving, and demonstrating competency in their own learning goals, informed by the learning sciences. So we want students who can articulate and set personal learning goals, develop strategies leveraging technology to achieve them, and reflect on the learning process itself to improve learning outcomes. We also want students who can build networks and customize their own learning environments in ways that support the learning process. We want our students to use technology to seek feedback that informs and improves their practices and to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways. Basically, we want consumers of information who can also take what they are using and shape their own learning rather than just being passive consumers of information and absorbing in the knowledge or the content that we are teaching in our different classrooms. So we will be using both the ISTE standards for students and the ISTE standards for educators throughout our course. And you'll notice if you scroll down to the bottom of any of those, you can download a PDF version if you prefer to have that at your disposal. So anytime our text refers to the NET standards, just know that we're referring to those ISTE standards. They just took away the word NETs. But instructional technology, this is where we are going to focus on the integration of any type of resources into a learning environment that we could create for online. So throughout this book, they're going to talk about the decision-making processes that you will have as you create different types of multimedia for your learners and for a client. Because our final project, our big assignment, will be putting together a client-based project based on the Assure model, where we look at the steps of creating a lesson that goes through the goals to effectively use technology in a step-by-step process where we analyze and give systemic feedback for this learning experience and eventually create or design a product for someone to use in their own content area. So you will want to look at all of the different breakout pieces within our text. So make sure that you focus on this little section talks about technology for our learners, more of inclusion. When we talk about learners, we will have all different types of learners, not just the typical traditional classroom student that may not have any type of learning needs. And this could even go with our adult learners. We've all got different levels of technology information, and we all have different learning styles. So we need to make sure that we understand what types of assistive technology are out there. And that will be part of our focus for this module. There's a separate component where you will go through and analyze some different assistive technology pieces. Some of them are very complex and others are very, very simplistic. So one of the focuses that I like to point out is that current technology offers lots of benefits for teachers or whoever the instructor is. One is the ability to digitally store and access large amounts of information, whether it's text, audio, visuals, games, any of those. Another unique advantage is that it's adaptable, so you can meet the varying needs of your students. So you can look at different ways to differentiate instruction so that all students can achieve the same level of achievement. And a third advantage, your students and you are no longer limited just to the confines of your classroom, so you can definitely flip your learning so the student or the learner can do things on their own, and then when you meet back together, if you have any type of face-to-face or even online interaction where you guys are all together in a classroom, then you can kind of take whatever it is that they've learned before they got there and you can expand on it. But we do want to think about the technology gap. There's that digital divide that you think doesn't necessarily exist anymore now that we have one-to-one capability. But the problem is most of our students, when they go home, if they have that one-to-one access, they don't typically have the internet at home, or they may not even have a device at home. Even if you send one home with them, there still is that divide in that they don't have the experience once they get home. The other part of the digital divide is that they won't always have the capability of learning those digital citizenship skills because they are not using technology on their own. They're only using it in the classroom, so they're not learning some of those digital citizenship skills that a student that does have access all the time to a cell phone or the internet. One of the biggest things that I don't know that we all think about is that there is a large pattern for cell phones that does not rely on voice anymore. So it's much more text messaging. So if you are emailing or posting things to a web page, your students' families may not actually have access to that. So we need to use different technologies, whether it's Remind or other similar messaging apps that you can send out your information the way that you would like for it to. So when we talk about media, there are 6 basic categories of media. We've got audio, we have text, we have people, and we'll get into that. We have video, we have visuals, and then we have manipulatives. So once you determine whatever media format you are going to create or use, then you need to decide how it would be appropriate as an instructional material. So this may be at the bottom of page 5 or the top of page 6. For example, if you're looking at text, your media formats could either be a printed book, computer software, ebook, web pages, anything that has text on it, but your instructional material example would be using like the StoryMaker software or some other digital cartoon that you could do, or having the students create their own textbook or storybook. And so you can look down. This is a great instructional chart that kind of takes you through the different media formats and then taking it through to what type of material examples you could create or use with it. So when you really boil it down, if you are still using teacher-centered instruction, then typically your technology use is maybe using a whiteboard or something just to disseminate information. But a true digital teacher is going to find ways to create interactive instruction for your students' learnings. And you could go through and find the different, how to change from a traditional role, educational role to a digital. You can look at the difference between the role of even the School Library Media Center. It does briefly talk about the role of standards, and we know that Arkansas, we adopted Common Core, but we've kind of tweaked them just a little bit. But you also want to make sure when you are designing lessons that you also are looking at national standards that might be useful as well. But the rest of our focus for this chapter is on copyright concerns. We need to, as educators, model good fair use guidelines. We need to make sure that we follow the copyright laws and identify text and visuals and audio that we did not create. But we do have a little bit of leeway in if we are using face-to-face teaching and we are making sure that we cite our sources. Fair use falls in for us much better and for student use as well, but we still need to teach them how to follow the guidelines.